Guys, good afternoon, happy Sunday. I hope you are having a good weekend. I'm just about to ruin it for you. Okay, so today we're going to look at Black Christmas 2019. Black Christmas 2019 is the second of two remakes for the 1974 original, which is one of the greatest slasher films of all time. In the next review, I will look into the 2006 one, and then after that we will go back to 1974, which I am looking forward to. It was such a good movie. It's such an underrated movie. If you ask anybody, have you heard of Halloween? Have you heard of Friday the 13th? Yeah. Even if they haven't seen the movies, they've heard of Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. A lot of people haven't heard of Black Christmas, which is a shame. It came out 4 years before Halloween. It actually was released the year after Roe versus Wade, so it does deal with political issues, but it does deal with them in a subtle way, whereas Black Christmas 2019 deals with them using a sledgehammer. If you take Black Christmas 1974, make it very woke, give it a lot of acid, then you have something close to Black Christmas 2019. Now, if you want to make a movie that sucks, or that is largely controversial, that is your God-given right to do so. Nobody should be allowed to stop you. But when you make a movie like this, using the name of one of the greatest slashers of all time, there is going to be animosity. And this is Black Christmas in name only. It is directed by Sofia Takal, and it stars Imogen Poots. And you may also recognize Cary Elwes as well. The movie is about a group of sorority girls who are stalked by a masked killer who has a bow and arrow. Now, the issue is the trailer gives it away. The trailer gives away most of the movie, and the trailer tells us that the frat boys are the killers. The trailer only neglects to mention one thing, and I will mention that later on in this review. Now, you can look at this in two ways. You can say that, look, marketing suck and they have ruined this movie for anybody who wants to see it, but you can look at it a second way and you can say, well, marketing saved marketing saved a lot of people from going and spending 90 minutes of their life and some of their money watching this movie. Now, this movie could have been a lot better. It could have landed well as a horror. It could have landed well as a parody. There are scenes in this movie that could have been really funny had they been presented in that way, but because they were presented so seriously, it was borderline laughable. Or it could have landed as a social justice movie. I don't doubt that the director Sofia Takal was passionate about her message, but it just didn't. For me, she just failed to effectively deliver it. So if we start with a couple of positives, just to start on a good note, Imogen Poots, for the most part, did an okay job with what she had available. For the most part, she landed her lines okay. I think some of the lines she didn't land very well. It was just down to the material she had available. Cary Elwes, again, he did the best with the character he had available. Cary Elwes was effectively a Poundland Jordan Peterson. He was a professor at the college whom the girls were trying to cancel. He also walked around with a kill list in his man bag, and he was a poor man who had to deliver the ridiculous conclusion to this movie, which I will go into later. So I suspect Mr. Elwes must have had a very substantial paycheck. And the other positive, well, the aesthetics. I enjoy Christmas movies, especially if it's a horror. So I did enjoy the aesthetic. The aesthetics. They at least had a tree, which caused an argument when they tried to put it up, but they at least had a tree. So I will give it that much. But for me, there wasn't anything else that I enjoyed. There was a heavy anti-man agenda. Now, you could have had the movie could have had some fun with this. We could have had some fun with we could have poked fun alpha men. We could have had some fun with that, but it was not, in no way, shape or form was it subtle. It was just far too full on. And I think even people who are passionate about the Me Too movement believed that this was just overdone. From the very first frame, you had a made-up quote from Calvin Hawthorne, who was the founder of the university, about how men were trying to grab power, how men are always trying to grab power. And Calvin Hawthorne himself was a sexist, a racist, and he owned slaves. He may have done other things that were wrong, but those were just the three things that I remember. The very first frat boy you met was a rape appeaser, and every frat boy you met throughout this movie was either a rapist, a rape appeaser, or a drunk. That was it. Nate, who played Marty's boyfriend, was a bit of an irritating character, and when he stood up to the girls and said that if you demonize all men like this, you are going to piss people off. Not all men are rapists. And then Chris Cancel Culture Watterson screamed that, "Don't you not all men me, don't you do that." He was then thrown out the house, and then when Nate returned a few minutes later to apologize, the killer was in the house, and Riley mouthed at him, "There's someone in the house." And like an alpha male, he picked up the axe, or he picked up something, and he said, "Nobody messes with my girls. I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to deal with this." And then he was hit with an arrow, and that was Nate. Finished. We also had the security guard, who showed an alarming lack of concern about a character who had been missing for 3 hours. So he was also the devil. Ironically, Landon, the one character who embodied innocence and niceness, actually looked and dressed like Bill Cosby. Landon was, I think, your only nice male character in this movie. Everybody else was a bit of an asshole. Now the characters were poor. We had probably Riley that was it. Maybe Chris Cancel Culture Watterson shouted a lot. She shouted a lot about this bust that she wanted removed, which the frat boys took to the room, the bust of Calvin Hawthorne. She wanted to cancel Poundland Peterson, Carrie Alway's character, but all she did was screech. There weren't any, with the exception of Riley, who was okay, there weren't any good characters. Now, all we learned about Riley was she had a previous sexual assault accusation she made, which was the theme of this movie. Her parents died, which was mentioned once very quickly, and that was it. We didn't really go back to that. And yeah, that was it. The acting was poor. The acting was terrible. Imogen Poots and Carrie Elwes did the best with what they had available, but on the most part, it was painful. The acting was painful. Now, I've reviewed Friday the 13th Part 2, and the characters were not very good in that either. They weren't as bad as this, but they weren't very good. But there was one advantage that Friday the 13th had over Black Christmas. Friday the 13th was R-rated, so it could go to town on its kills. And as a slasher movie, if you get your kills right, then there's going to be a lot of forgiveness in terms of the plot, in terms of logistics, in terms of the characters. Black Christmas was a PG-13. Now, scary movies to tell in the dark, A Quiet Place, Insidious, Sixth Sense were PG-13 movies, and they worked. They were good movies, for me at least. But slashers very rarely get away with being PG-13 because people go for the violence, people go for the gore. And this, you could clearly see when you watch this that it was meant to be an R-rated movie, but at some point they decided to change their demographic to a younger audience, which meant your profanities and your kills had to be mutilated in editing. Many of the kills were either watered down or the characters were killed off screen. Now you lose that from a slasher movie, then you just don't have a slasher movie. I'm a massive fan of slasher movies, and we don't set the bar too high in terms of the plot, in terms of the characters. We let a lot of things slide as long as the kills are good. And Black Christmas got this wrong. They either cut away from the kills or they simply just killed the characters off screen. Now, another scene that I really despised was the rapey dance. There was a talent show, and 4 of the girls decided to dress up in little Santa Claus outfits and call out the frat boys for their rapiness. One of the lines used was, "Ho, ho, ho, I didn't know. Ho, 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 I didn't know." And this was painful to watch, but what really bugged me about this scene was it was clearly stolen from Mean Girls. Now, in Mean Girls, this was such a fun scene. Gretchen was switched places at the last minute. It's confused Gretchen. She kicked the stereo by accident and turned it off. When she tried to fix this problem, she kicked the stereo into the crowd and knocked out her boyfriend. And then Katie stepped up and sang, got the show back on the road, finished the dance, and she attracted the attention of her crush. Now, when it was done in Mean Girls, it was a really fun scene. When it was done in Black Christmas, it was painful. It's so painful to watch. And the first kill as well. The first kill was severely watered down. Now, you had like a group of girls who were missing one of their friends. Their friends was walking over from the library, and their friend was killed by an ice pick. But the ice pick came up like this, and then it went down, but you didn't really see anything. Now, those girls were disregarded for the best part of the movie, and they're brought in at the end as a cavalry. But what annoyed me, and this Black Christmas 2019 is not the only movie to do this, but this bugs my happiness in horror movies. When Lindsay turned around, she initially thought she was being followed by a guy. She was about to stab him with the car keys, and as she turned round, he crossed the road. She heaved this sigh of relief, and then when she turned round, she saw the real killer. Now, when she turned round, there was a big loud sound, and that kind of jump scare gets on my nerves. Because for the audience, if you hear a loud sound out of the blue, it is gonna make you jolt in your seat. Now, that is just lazy filmmaking. If you go back to Laurie Strode's jump scare in Halloween, where she met the sheriff and she screamed out, that's a proper jump scare. Or in Friday the 13th, when the cat went through the window at the beginning, these are good jump scares. Using loud sounds for your jump scare is just lazy filmmaking. Now, Black Christmas 2019 is not the only movie guilty of that, but I did want to mention that just now because it's something that I really don't like. And then there's the end. Now, at this point, we know that it's the frat boys, and we know that they have, when they're stabbed, they exude this black liquid. Now, Riley wants to know what's going on in there. She saw a weird initiation ceremony earlier in the film. She wants to know what's going on in there. So the logical thing is, let's send in the nice guy. So she sends in Landon to distract the frat boys. She's sending in this guy to get killed so that she can get into the initiation room and see what's going on in there. So as Landon gets in, and he then agrees to accompany them and join their pledge. At this point, they find Riley in the initiation room, and they tie her up. Now, they have the Calvin Hawthorne bust, and it's leaking it's black oil. Now, at this point, Cary Elwes reveals everything, and it's just on the nose. It is just completely on the nose. He says that Calvin Hawthorne died 200 years ago. Now, Calvin Hawthorne had this fear that women were going to try and cancel men, that they were going to forget their place, which was behind men, and they were going to step out of line. So Calvin Hawthorne put this black goo into his bust. Now this black goo would empower men to deal with women who stepped out of line, which just mixes up the original message that all frat boys are jerks. Because if the behavior of these frat boys is down to this black oil that's coming out of Calvin Hawthorne's bust, then surely we can say that, well, it's not down to them being jerks, it's down to this bust. And the boys made a list of the girls who had stepped out of line. This is the same list that Poundland Peterson carried around in his handbag, and this was a list of girls who were to die. At this point, Riley screams, "You're all insane." And I think it was Dean. I just don't know names. There was too many dud characters. I think it was Dean who grabs her by the hair and says, "How do you want to die? Your body, your choice." So at this point, Chris Cancel Culture Watterson bursts in and she screams out that you have messed with the wrong sisters. A brawl breaks out, and at some point Riley's able to grab this bust, and Carrie Elwes shouts at her, "Don't break the bust. Don't break the bust. Women have a place. It's just behind men." And Riley then shouts, "We cannot be broken." She breaks the bust. One of the girls sets the place on fire. The girls run out. They shut the door, and that's pretty much where the movie ends. Now you have some uncomfortable issues about this ending. All through the movie you have these frat boys who are portrayed as just bad, but then as the bust is broken, you can see that they are starting to come around, but they're still left to perish in this building at the end of the movie. And how do you explain away this burned down building and all these bodies? It's just beyond, it really is beyond belief. Now I get it. I'm not the demographic for this movie. I'm not who it was aimed at. I'm not the right gender or the right age range. But for me, they didn't deliver the message very well at all. There is, I believe that a lot of passionate supporters about the Me Too movement did not buy in to this message, did not buy into this movie. It could have been done so much better. Like, this could have been a good parody movie. Had the ridiculous idea about Calvin Hawthorne and the black oil being done in parody, then it could have been fun. We could have had some fun with that, but ultimately it was done very seriously. It wasn't an enjoyable movie. You had no good kills. There was no laughs. There were no strong characters. The message they tried to get across, they just failed. And it's very, I think a lot of fans of this movie won't even know that this was a remake. I do kind of hope that they Google Black Christmas and they actually go back and watch the 1974 original and even the 2006 remake. Give that a shot as well, because had this been a standalone movie, I don't think it wouldn't have been very good. But it's your right. You have the right to make any movie you want, but when you make it as a remake to the 1974 Black Christmas, which is a classic, that's when you have animosity. That's when you have people getting frustrated. But anyway, you win some, you lose some. I did watch this in 2019. I didn't enjoy it in 2019. I went to the cinema to see this. I thought for this channel I bought it on Amazon and I stayed in. I watched it. I gave it a go, but just nothing. Even watching it a second time, nothing really stood out. So this movie, the next review I will do will be the 2006 remake, and then I will work my way back to the 1974, which is it's an underrated classic. Not enough people know about the original Black Christmas, so I will I do look forward to watching that again myself, as has been a long time since I've seen it. So guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thank you very much. Take care.